Good morning, Dan and Amy. To America from a worried European friend. Column in the Wall Street Journal from Daniel Schwamenthal, who is the director of the AJC Transatlantic Institute. America today is what it has always been, a flawed society, like all others, but also a unique force for good in the world. No other multi-ethnic, multi-religious society can credibly claim to be more democratic, more prosperous, or more just than the United States. Let me repeat that. I'll post it so you can share. America is what it's always been, a flawed society, because man is flawed, and that's never going to change. But it's also a unique force for good in the world. No other multi-ethnic, multi-religious society can credibly claim to be more democratic, small d, more prosperous, and more just than the United States. But America can't remain the leader of the free world if itself is no longer free. To be the guarantor of Western security requires military and economic power, but also a sense of mission. And right now, Americans are committing mass character suicide. If the country goes beyond acknowledging that racism and inequality persist and must be fought, and instead convinces itself that it is inherently and irredeemably racist, it can't possibly continue to believe that it has any right to lead. Such an America would reject the notion that the West is worth defending and regard Europe as also inherently oppressive, lest we forget. We know who will fill the vacuum left by an America in retreat and at war with itself as they watch America's self-immolation. Leaders in Moscow, Beijing, and Tehran surely can't believe their luck. For more on this, we're pleased to be joined by our friend Michael Warren Davis, editor-in-chief of Crisis Magazine. M.W. Davis, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Oh, I love to be here.
What about what our friend David Schwamenthal, director of AJC Transatlantic Institute, had to say from across the pond about the importance of America continuing to be the beacon of freedom and the guarantor of Western civilization?
Well, it's interesting because I wrote about this recently in the American Conservative. I did a piece I meant it as sort of a cautionary tale, but it got the most negative feedback of anything I'd ever written. I got clapped back by the Wall Street, the New York Times, the Washington Post. The writer and director of Cesar Millan, the dog whisperer, kind of had a go at me. It was
wow, that's a pretty expansive group. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So in addition to the usual Vox and Slate, and it was and the point that I was trying to make was basically that I don't know if you've heard this expression Weimar America. It's very common in conservative circles, basically saying
the run up
America
to Hitler.
Is beginning.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And so I said, actually, more than Weimar Germany, America is starting to look a lot like the Spain during the Second Spanish Republic, right before the Spanish Civil War, because what we're faced with is, as you sort of alluded to, a left that has completely lost faith in the foundations of our country, and is seeking to sort of violently purge all the undesirable elements from our society, everything that they consider to be reactionary and counter-revolutionary, which not only includes, hard-bitten reactionaries like me, but, people like George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, and even, in Boston, depictions of the First Black Regiment, who they consider, to be complicit with white supremacy. And it's astonishing, and what I was trying to say was basically, if this goes on, if the left continues to demonize not only the right, but everything that this country is built on, there is going to be a serious and possibly violent reaction. You can't disrupt the civil order. You can't commit acts of violence, verbally and physically, against the people that disagree with you and expect them to not fight back at some point. That is by no means desirable. But what is desirable, we have to say, is de-escalation. And de-escalation is the one thing that they refuse to commit to.
Well, and the only way you get to de-escalation is if you have people stand up rather than appease. Appeasement is provocative, and that's the posture of big city mayors and Democrat socialists and some Republicans. And you make the point in terms of analogizing our situation to pre-Franco Spain that I think is a really salient one, which is the left putting the right in a defensive posture, and that's the witch's brew for violence and for tearing at the social fabric. And so, wouldn't it then stand to reason that for peaceful pluralists, the remedy is to be proactively proactively courageous in defense of those underpinnings of a free society rather than on defense?
Well, there can be no reconciliation between people who disagree with each other if there is no good faith. And I don't mean good faith in sort of the quaint liberal democratic sense. I mean, if you don't believe that, even if you have to believe that the people that you're debating with can be won over to your side of the argument. It's not necessarily about us, agreeing to disagree and all getting along and saying kumbaya. The left doesn't even believe that we can be redeemed, that we can be brought over to their way of thinking. That's the frightening thing, is this idea of, I'm sure that you've talked a lot about, what is her name, D'Angelo's idea of white fragility.
Yeah, Robin DiAngelo, right.
If you don't admit that you are, as a white person, if you don't admit that you are a racist, that is proof that you are a racist. There's absolutely no way for white people to prove that they are not racist. At that point, it's literally damned if you do, damned if you don't. There is nothing that we can do but submit abjectly to the left's political programs. And at that point, again, there's no hope for de-escalation.
Well, do you feel like that we're on the verge of having a civil war?
I don't want to say that. I don't think that we necessarily are. I think that this is still it's contained enough, in student radicals and the sort of red academia, that it hasn't gotten to that point yet. But look, when Robin DiAngelo's book is being recommended by officials in the Department of Justice, as Rod Dreher showed on his blog, I think it was just yesterday.
Yep.
This poisonous ideology is being spread throughout the government, through institutions of power, and it's long had its claws in the army. Not a lot of people realize that, but high levels of the U.S. military are also infected by this sort of these woke doctrines, and that is frightening. That is absolutely when the guys that are legally sanctioned to point guns at you, if you don't do what they want, are becoming servants of this ideology. Yeah, that should be cause for alarm.
Well, so so this is the issue. So Robin DiAngelo, Ibram Kendi, Ta-Nehisi Coates, to me, these are just 2.0 race hustlers. Jesse Jackson, Al Sharpton were the race hustlers, the poverty pimps of a previous generation or two. These are individuals that have some, basically academic credentials of some sort that establish some, legitimacy with the intelligentsia in maybe a way that street preachers like Sharpton never did. So it's just 2.0. It'd be one thing if it was just them and they create a consultancy class that goes to corporate boardrooms and corporate retreats and hands out T-shirts and everybody gets woke and they make a bunch of money. Or they go to schools and do the same thing with the teachers and the faculty lounge and everybody makes a bunch of money. And that's all well and good because that can be contained. But what you're talking about is putting people in the Kafka trap in every aspect of their life. Everywhere they turn, they're in a Kafka trap, and there are consequences for resistance. And to me, I don't know how you get to that place of good faith or a belief in the ability to persuade based on the merits and avoid sort of this inexorable march that you're describing.
Well, I go out of my way to not say anything bad about the Middle Ages, but I will say this, that the idea of collective guilt was such a horrible stain on the history of Western civilization. The idea that all Jews were complicit in the death of Christ. More recently, until Mitt Romney's lifetime, actually, I don't know because he talks about it, the Mormon Church believed that that black people were descended from Cain, and that their skins were stained black by the sins of their father, killing Abel. This idea of collective guilt and the sort of the inexorable mark of a sin that we bear, just by nature of our DNA, is a dangerous concept, because it sounds extreme and it sounds a little bit remote now, but if it becomes sort of the law of the land, the common law, that white people are perennially guilty of the sins of slavery and segregation, then that will, if that is infecting the Department of Justice, the American legal system, that is going to have horrifying consequences down the road. But that is the result of having what I call in the article the politicization of everything.
Right,
but absolutely inescapable.
Right, and that includes the immediacy of your personal safety. When you have the Seattle Police Department sending letters out to businesses and residents saying, per this new city council ordinance, we will not be able to protect you effectively. You're on your own. When you have mayors around the country appeasing the mob, you see the reaction in terms of increases in gun sales and the like. But, I mean, that is not a tenable situation. Some people are for law and order and the respect for private property, and other people aren't. And the people that aren't are being backed by your civilian political leaders. That is not sustainable.
I've talked on your show before about the concept of bourgeois justice. And this is a Marxist theme, that bourgeois justice is our idea of, in order to find someone guilty of a crime, you need evidence, you need trial by jury, there's a procedure. Whereas they call revolutionary justice is what advances the revolution. You don't necessarily have to be literally complicit in the crime. If your being, if your existence, if your speech stands in the way of quote-unquote progress, then you are guilty. You are guilty of obstructing the revolution, and that is the highest crime of all. And we talk. The left hates the concept of law and order. Even those who don't realize that the opposite of law and order is revolutionary justice. And it is inevitable that as soon as you start to peel away the layers of the Anglo-American legal tradition that does say that you have the right to the presumption of innocence, the right to a trial by jury, to evidence-based prosecution, then it's a very, very, very short line to that concept of revolutionary justice, where the legal system is being used baldly to advance political ends.
He is Michael Warren Davis. He's the editor-in-chief of Crisis Magazine and the author of The Reactionary Mind. Michael Warren Davis, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
You've made the switch, and it feels so good. You've switched to Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Signature Bank is Chicago's fastest-growing independently owned business bank. It's a bank where relationships still matter. Signature Bank knows your name and your story. I'm Dan Proft, and I know this because Signature Bank is my business bank.
Hey all, this is Jim Carr, co-host of the #1 rated manufacturing podcast, Making Chips.